After 18 years of mystery, a DNA test may have changed everything, but the truth is much darker than you imagine. What is happening in the Madeleine McCann case? You need to watch this until the end. Imagine waking up one day and realizing that your whole life might have been a lie, that the childhood memories you have are nothing more than disjointed fragments, that something always seemed off, but you never knew exactly what. Now imagine that amid this emptiness, a suspicion begins to grow inside you. What if I'm not who I always thought I was? That's exactly what happened to Julia Wendell, a young Polish woman who claims to have discovered the truth about her own identity. And that truth could shock the entire world. Julia believes she is Madeleine McCann, the British girl who disappeared in 2007, a case that for nearly 2 decades has haunted Europe and the world. Does the story sound absurd? Certainly. But what if I told you that there are details that make this hypothesis worth taking seriously? That there are points in the official investigation that were never fully explained, and that a DNA test could change everything? Madeleine's disappearance has always been shrouded in mysteries, mistakes, and contradictions. But this new twist raises an even scarier question. What if we've been looking at the case the wrong way all along? The media, the detectives, and even the McCann family had to react quickly to this story. But what is behind all this commotion? Is Julia just another young woman seeking attention? Or is there something here that we cannot ignore? Today, we're going to analyze every detail of this shocking claim, separating fact from fiction, and revealing the secrets that no one is telling you. When a disappearance case becomes as famous as Madeleine McCann's, we tend to think we know everything about it. After all, how many times has this mystery been debated? Theories have emerged and vanished. Suspects were investigated, evidence discarded, and yet the definitive answer never came. But now an unexpected doubt arises. What if Madeleine never disappeared the way we've always imagined? The idea may seem absurd, but this isn't the first time someone has come forward claiming to be the lost girl. In fact, there's a pattern in these kinds of claims, and it reveals something much larger about the psychology behind the case. The most intriguing part? Not all of these claims are simply dismissed. Some have even led to investigations, revealing gaps that many preferred to ignore. Now, with Julia Wendell's story, the question becomes even more complicated. What do we really know about the unfolding of the McCann case? If there are so many gaps and inconsistencies in the original investigation, how can we be sure that all possibilities have been properly explored? Before dismissing Julia's story as just another bid for attention, we need to look at the bigger picture. What does this twist reveal about Madeleine's own case? And the answer to that question may be much darker than anyone imagines. Madeleine McCann's disappearance is not just an unsolved case. It is a symbol of the fear every family holds, the fear that a child might vanish without a trace. Since 2007, this mystery has tormented the world. The investigations have already cost millions of pounds, involved various international police forces, and spawned theories ranging from human trafficking to a cover-up that could involve powerful people. But despite all this attention, the answers never came. Instead, what we saw was a trail of doubts, inconsistencies, and pieces that simply don't fit. And it is exactly in this space of uncertainty that stories like Julia Wendell's find fertile ground. When a case remains unsolved for so long, it becomes a blank canvas where any new piece may seem like the final key to the puzzle. But there's a problem here. The more time passes, the harder it becomes to separate fact from speculation. Social media amplifies rumors and spreads misinformation. The media chases clicks and sensationalism. And in the midst of it all, the real victims are forgotten. So what is the truth about Julia Wendell? Does she really believe she is Madeleine McCann? Or are we looking at yet another piece in the web of contradictions surrounding this case? Whatever the answer, one thing is clear. The way this story has unfolded reveals a lot about how we perceive disappearance cases and how we seek the truth or the illusion of it. In 2017, a young woman in the United States went viral by claiming she was a child who had disappeared more than 20 years ago. The public was moved, headlines spread, and even a DNA test was conducted. The result? Negative. She wasn't the missing child, but for her that didn't matter. The young woman said she had always felt that her life wasn't real, that there were gaps in her story that didn't make sense. And when she saw the photo of the missing girl, something inside her said that it all made sense. Now, looking at Julia Wendell's story, we need to ask ourselves, what really motivates claims like this? The answers you seek are not as simple as they seem. Julia Wendell is just another case of someone trying to fill the gaps in her own identity. Or is there something that truly connects this young woman to the Madeleine McCann mystery? What we uncover about this story could completely change your perception of the case. So let's analyze every detail now, and I guarantee you, some of this information will leave you speechless. Before we continue, if you want more investigative content like this, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because here we analyze every detail that the media often ignores. Now let's get to the facts. Julia Wendell was never sure who she really was. Since she was little, something didn't add up. While other children had clear memories of their childhood, she only had disjointed flashes, random scenes, strange feelings, as if her life before a certain point simply didn't exist. But the worst came when she began to question her own family. There were secrets, unanswered questions, old photographs that seemed wrong. One day she heard a comment that kept echoing in her mind. "You don't belong to this family." Was it a joke? A throwaway remark? Maybe. But to Julia, it sounded more like a confession than a joke. Then came the moment that would change everything. Browsing the internet, she came across a case she had heard of before, but had never really paid attention to: the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. And that's when everything began to make sense. She looked at the photos of the missing girl and felt a chill. The shape of the eyes, the small mark under the right eye, the contour of the face, all of it made something inside her scream, "That's me!" At first it seemed absurd, but Julia couldn't ignore the feeling. What started as a suspicion turned into an obsession, and soon she delved into details that only reinforced her belief. She claimed to remember sunny beaches, a strange man, unfamiliar rooms, fragmented memories, yet intense. Then came the biggest shock. Julia found inconsistencies in her family story. Records were missing, dates didn't match, the birth certificate seemed odd, and the most alarming, her parents avoided talking about her past. Doubt turned into certainty. Julia was convinced she was Madeleine McCann, but the internet doesn't forgive. When her claims began to gain traction, she became the target of a true tsunami of reactions. The question now was Julia right, or was she just trapped in an illusion? Julia's story went viral quickly. Headlines appeared in newspapers around the world, and experts began debating whether this young Polish woman could really be Madeleine McCann. The internet split. On one side, there were those who believed she might be telling the truth. After all, the physical similarities existed, and the confusing history of her family raised suspicions. On the other side, there were those who saw it as just another attempt to gain attention. But regardless of public opinion, one thing was clear. There was a way to settle this matter once and for all: the DNA test. When news broke that Julia would undergo a DNA test, the whole world was left in suspense. If the results showed a genetic connection with the McCann family, it would change everything. It would be the biggest twist in the history of disappearance cases. Meanwhile, the McCann family's reaction was cautious. They didn't completely rule out the possibility, but they also didn't show enthusiasm. Their focus had always been on the official investigation, and this new element seemed more like a deviation from the path. Madeleine's mother, Kate McCann, has always been discreet about such claims. She had seen others come forward claiming to be Madeleine before. But what if this time it were different? The days leading up to the DNA result were intense. The internet exploded with theories. Experts analyzed every detail. Some said that Julia was being manipulated by people who wanted to profit from the story. Others believed that she truly believed what she was saying. Then the test was done, and when the result came out, the truth emerged. But would that mean the end of the mystery or just the beginning of something even bigger? What happened next made the Madeleine McCann case even stranger than it already was. When Julia Wendell's DNA results were revealed, the impact was immediate. What should have been the conclusion of this story became only the beginning of a new wave of doubts, accusations, and theories. The truth? Julia was not Madeleine McCann. The announcement was made quickly, but the damage had already been done. By that time, millions of people were following every detail of the story. For many, it was just another disappointment, another young woman seeking attention, another rumor that grew to gigantic proportions. But for others, the doubt remained. Social media exploded. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, everyone had something to say. Some accused Julia of manipulating the situation to gain fame. Others blamed influencers and journalists who helped spread her story without verifying the facts. And then came the most controversial point. Julia claimed she had been deceived. She alleged that she was manipulated into believing she was Madeleine, that she was encouraged to publicly share her story, and that now she was simply being discarded. The uproar turned into fury. People who had once supported her began to attack her. Hate messages flooded her profiles. Some said she deserved to be punished for playing with the McCann family's pain. Others started to wonder if Julia wasn't, in fact, another victim of this story. But one question lingered. Why did so many people believe this story? What made the entire world stop and listen to Julia Wendell? The answer goes far beyond Julia. It's part of a larger phenomenon, a pattern that has repeated for years whenever a disappearance case gains worldwide attention. Julia Wendell may not have been the first to claim to be a missing child, but she certainly won't be the last. Her story followed a well-known script. Someone comes forward claiming to be a person who disappeared years ago. Social media amplifies the story, creating a digital spectacle. Traditional media gets involved, either validating or questioning the claims. When the truth comes out, the public is divided between disappointment, anger, and new theories. Julia Wendell's case was just another chapter in this cycle. Looking back, we see other similar cases. Some people have claimed to be Elizabeth Smart, J.C. Dugard, even Timothy Pitson, missing children whose names later became entangled in false claims. But why does this happen? Part of the answer lies in the psychology of trauma and identity. Some of these people truly believe they are who they claim to be. Others may be trying to fill voids in their own histories. And there are those who simply seek attention, recognition, or even profit. In Julia's case, all of this blended into a perfect storm. She seemed to believe her own story. And more than that, people wanted to believe her. The disappearance of Madeleine McCann has never had a conclusion. This creates a gap, an open space where any clue, no matter how unlikely, seems like a possible piece of the puzzle. And that is where the danger lies. The need for answers can turn unfounded stories into major narratives, diverting attention from the real investigation and creating more confusion than solutions. And while that happens, the most important question remains unanswered. Where is Madeleine McCann? And why, after so many years, does this case still seem so far from a resolution? When Julia Wendell's DNA test proved she wasn't Madeleine McCann, many expected the story to end there. But in reality, that's when everything became even stranger. Madeleine's parents, Kate and Jerry McCann, decided not to comment publicly on Julia's case. No official statement, no interview, just silence. For many, this was a sign of exhaustion. Since their daughter's disappearance, the couple had been forced to deal with countless false hopes and bizarre theories. Every new speculation made them relive the worst day of their lives. But for others, that silence only fueled further doubts. If Julia was lying, why not refute her immediately? If it was all just a delusion, why was the reaction so measured? Experts on disappearances began debating the case. Psychologists analyzed Julia's behavior, trying to understand her motivations. Some believed that she truly thought she was Madeleine, a rare psychological phenomenon known as induced false memory. Others saw a classic pattern of someone seeking identity and belonging, something common among victims of childhood trauma. But there were also those who questioned how this story was handled from the very start. Why did the press give so much space to an unproven claim? Why did Julia's story make headlines even before the DNA test was conducted? The truth is that this wasn't just an individual confusion. It was a reflection of a larger problem. The Madeleine McCann case is one of the most media-saturated of modern history. Any new information, no matter how absurd, has the power to mobilize millions of people. And in this process, the truth often becomes secondary. But the big question remains. If Julia Wendell wasn't Madeleine, then where is Madeleine McCann? Julia Wendell's case exposed something that few want to admit. People need to believe that Madeleine can still be found. It's not just about Julia. It's about the fear that the truth might be far worse than any theory could suggest. If Madeleine were still alive, it would mean there's a chance to rescue her. But what if she isn't? What if, in reality, her disappearance was always enveloped in something much darker? With every new story, every false lead, every person coming forward claiming to be Madeleine, the cycle repeats. People cling to a possibility. The media amplifies the case. Experts try to find logic where there is none. And in the end, we're back to square one. Julia Wendell became the most recent face of this cycle, but she won't be the last. And meanwhile, the official investigation remains weaker than ever. The main suspect, Christian Bruckner, might end up not being convicted due to lack of evidence. The German police insist he is guilty, but so far nothing has been conclusive. And that leads us to the true horror of this case. If neither Julia Wendell nor Bruckner, nor any of the theories presented so far have been able to provide a definitive answer, Then what really happened to Madeleine McCann? Perhaps deep down, no one really wants to know, because the truth, when it finally comes to light, may be something that no one is prepared to face. And you? Do you believe there is still something to be discovered in this case? Or are we facing a mystery that will never be solved? Leave your opinion in the comments, and if you want to continue following investigations that challenge the official version, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because here, we keep searching for the truth. The case of Julia Wendell shows us something much bigger than a simple identity mix-up. It exposes people's desperation for answers, the ease with which theories spread, and how the desire to believe can be stronger than the facts themselves. The truth is, the world wanted Julia to be Madeleine McCann, because that would mean an end to a story that has lasted nearly 2 decades. But reality doesn't work that way. Following this case made me realize just how easily we can be swayed by emotion, by hope, and by the desire for a comforting ending. But are we really seeking the truth, or just trying to cling to something that makes us feel better? Over the years, many stories like this have emerged. Some were blatant frauds, others came from people who truly believed what they were saying. But they all had one thing in common. They diverted attention from what really matters. The main question remains unanswered. Where is Madeleine McCann? And perhaps that's the scariest part of all, because while we focus on these parallel stories, time keeps passing. And with each day that goes by, the chance to uncover the truth diminishes. So what have we learned from all this? If there's one thing this case makes clear, it's the importance of responsible skepticism. This doesn't mean doubting everything, but rather questioning before accepting any version as the absolute truth. And now I want to know, do you think Julia truly believed what she said? Or was there something more behind this story? Leave your opinions in the comments. I really want to see what you think. If you've made it this far, comment, "I seek the truth," so I know you followed this analysis to the end. And if you found this story intriguing, you need to watch the next video, where we analyze another case full of contradictions that the media never properly explained. Click here and join me in this investigation. And of course, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because here we don't accept easy answers. We search for the truth.